Of course, here is the translation. The ballroom of the Metropolitan Museum of Art glittered under the weight of crystal chandeliers and billionaire egos. It was the gala event of the season, and at the gravitational center of all the power and attention stood Ethan Chen. Leaning against a marble column, he was an island of silence and coldness in an ocean of chatter and false laughter. Every single divorced or simply ambitious woman in New York had, at some point, tried to break the ice that coated the CEO of Chen Corp. All had failed. That night, the attempt came in the form of Victoria Davenport, heiress to a real estate empire, with a smile as sharp as her haute couture dress. "Ethan," she purred, materializing by his side with 2 glasses of champagne. Lonely as ever. A pity. A man with your power should have the world at his feet. Or perhaps a queen by his side. Ethan took the glass, but his eyes showed not the slightest trace of interest. They were pieces of onyx, polished and impenetrable. "I don't seek the world, Victoria. I build it. And I don't need a queen. Thrones are made for one." The refusal was so sharp and public that an awkward silence formed around them. Victoria, for the first time in her life, flushed with humiliation. He had dismissed her without even raising his voice, rejecting her as if she were a worthless stock offer. The message to everyone in the ballroom was clear. Ethan Chen was untouchable. No woman was good enough for him. But then, something almost imperceptible happened. For a split second, Ethan's gaze shifted from Victoria and swept across the room, over politicians and celebrities until it landed on a figure near the service exit. A young woman in a discreet black uniform from the event staff, holding a clipboard. It was Maya Miller. Their eyes met, and for an instant, the wall of ice around Ethan melted. A glint of possessiveness, of longing, of something incredibly intimate, warmed his gaze. It was a moment so fleeting that no one else noticed. No one but Maya, whose heart gave a painful leap in her chest. Then, as quickly as it came, the glint was gone, and the cold CEO was back. Hours later, in the quiet of their penthouse, Maya's work uniform was tossed over a designer chair that cost more than her car. She was wearing one of Ethan's soft t-shirts and watching the sleeping city, still feeling the echo of that exchanged look in the ballroom. "You were cruel to her," Maya said softly, as she felt his arms wrap around her from behind. "I was clear," Ethan corrected, his voice now devoid of coldness, a rough whisper in her ear. "There's a difference." He kissed her shoulder, inhaling her scent. "No one can have the slightest doubt. No one can even imagine that the man who rejects the entire world comes home every night to worship the daughter of his family's maid." The phrase, which once would have hurt her, was now an inside joke between them, a reminder of how unlikely and secret the world they had built was. "I'm not the maid's daughter anymore," she murmured, leaning into his touch. "No," he agreed. "You're not." He turned her around and guided her to the coffee table, where a single black velvet envelope rested. "This is who you are." With trembling hands, Maya opened the envelope. Inside, there were no jewels or keys to a new car. There was the deed to a small, charming bookstore in Greenwich Village, a place they had passed months ago, when Maya had sighed and said it was the most perfect place in the world. Next to the deed was a handwritten note from him. "So you have a place to keep all the stories, especially ours." Tears welled in her eyes. He didn't just love her. He listened to her. He saw her in a way no one ever had. He spoiled her not with empty luxuries, but by fulfilling dreams she barely dared to whisper. "Ethan, this is..." she began, speechless. He took her hand, kissing the simple wedding band she could never wear in public. "This is just the beginning," he promised, the intensity in his eyes reserved only for her. "I rejected the world, Maya, so I could have you all to myself. You married the cold billionaire CEO. Now, let me spoil my wife in peace." And in the silence of the night high above the city that saw him as an untouchable king, he kissed her, sealing once again the best-kept and most dangerous secret in New York. The next morning arrived with an even colder atmosphere. If before Maya's colleagues treated her with a distant cordiality, now they avoided her as if she carried a contagious disease. Whispers died down when she approached the coffee station, and the few glances she received were laden with a pity that hurt her more than Ethan's anger ever could. She was, in everyone's eyes, the CEO's latest victim, an example of what happened when you didn't meet the manic perfection he demanded. Little did they know that the only thing that truly hurt her was the forced distance between them, a 5-meter chasm that separated her desk from his office door. In the middle of the morning, a message discreetly flashed in the corner of her computer screen, coming from the internal chat system, directly from Chen. "Your eyes look tired. Get more sleep tonight." It was a dangerously personal message, but worded in a way that, if intercepted, could be interpreted as a critique of her productivity. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. She typed a quick professional reply. "Understood, sir. The finalized report is on your desk." But the implicit message was clear. "I'm thinking of you, too." This small exchange was the only truce in a tense morning. The real storm arrived just before lunch, in the form of Kevin Chen. Ethan's younger brother was his opposite in almost every way. Where Ethan was a contained, cold force of nature, Kevin was a showy peacock with a charming smile that didn't reach his cruel eyes. He was the vice president of public relations, a position he used to polish his own image while planting intrigues. He didn't walk, he paraded through the office, stopping directly in front of Maya's desk. "Maya Miller, the star of the moment," he said loudly enough for all the surrounding cubicles to hear. He held a steaming cup of coffee. "I heard you received some special attention from my brother yesterday. He can be intense. I hope you didn't cry too much." Maya looked up from her monitor, her heart hammering against her ribs. She kept her expression neutral. "Mr. Chen demands excellence from all his employees, Mr. Chen. I appreciate the feedback to improve my work." Kevin let out a fake laugh. "Ah, so professional. I admire that." And then, with a clumsy, accidental move, he let the coffee cup tip over, spilling the scalding liquid all over Maya's desk, soaking a pile of important documents. "Oh my goodness, what a disaster. I'm so clumsy." The smell of roasted coffee and the pain of the hot liquid that splashed on her hand filled the air. But Maya didn't scream. She didn't flinch. Calmly, she took a tissue, wiped her hand, and began to dry the papers one by one, with a serenity that disconcerted Kevin. "Don't worry, Mr. Chen," she said, her voice firm and low. "Accidents happen. Fortunately, I have digital copies of everything. Excuse me, I need to clean this up." The lack of a dramatic reaction annoyed him. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper only she could hear. "You know, my father always told us not to mix with the help. It seems my brother has forgotten the house rules. Be careful not to get truly burned, sweetie. The place you came from always has its doors open." That was the blow. The mention of her mother, who had worked as a housekeeper in the Chen mansion for years. The final humiliation. But still, Maya didn't give him the satisfaction. She just stared at him, her eyes conveying a silent strength that said, "You can't break me." If this story has touched you so far, showing the silent strength of someone fighting for love against prejudice, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications so you don't miss a second of Maya and Ethan's journey. Kevin finally walked away, frustrated, leaving Maya with the steaming mess and the stares of the entire office. She stood up and went to the restroom, not to cry but to breathe. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, the woman looking back at her was not the scared girl who once served drinks at that family's house. She was the wife of the CEO of Chen Corp, and she needed to start acting like it. 20 minutes later, she was summoned to Ethan's office. The door closed, and for the first time since the previous night, they were alone. Ethan's CEO mask had cracked, revealing a volcanic fury underneath. "Did he touch you? Did that bastard lay a hand on you?" he asked, his voice deep, his hands clenched into fists on the mahogany desk. "No, he just spilled coffee." "Ethan, calm down," she said, approaching him. "Calm down?" I saw everything on the camera. I heard what he whispered. "I'm going to end him, Maya. I swear I'll take everything from him." "And confirm all his suspicions?" she argued, stopping in front of the desk and placing her hand on his clenched fist. His skin was burning with rage. "If you defend me, if you treat me differently, they'll know. That's what he wants. He's provoking you into making a mistake. We have a plan, remember? 2 more months. We can't throw it all away over a cup of coffee." Ethan stared at her, the conflict etched on his face. Her logic was impeccable, but his protective instinct screamed for revenge. He took a deep breath, the sound filling the silent room. Slowly, he relaxed his fist under her hand, turning his palm to intertwine his fingers with hers, a gesture hidden by the imposing desk. "You're too strong for your own good," he said, the anger giving way to a reluctant admiration. "And you're too impulsive for ours," she replied with a half-smile. "We balance each other." He squeezed her hand, a silent pact of resistance. 2 months, he repeated, like a mantra. "And then, no one will ever dare disrespect you again." The danger had passed for now, but the first battle of the war had been fought in the open, and they both knew that Kevin Chen would not be the last soldier the family would send to destroy them. The days that followed the incident with Kevin were marked by a treacherous calm. He ignored her with a studied contempt, but Maya felt his eyes on her constantly, waiting for a slip-up. Ethan, for his part, redoubled his discretion, communicating only through short orders and impersonal emails. The loneliness in the midst of the crowd was overwhelming, and Maya clung to the promise of 2 months like a shipwreck survivor clings to a piece of wood. The calm, however, was spectacularly broken the following Wednesday. A different kind of buzz took over the floor. It wasn't the hum of fear that Ethan's presence caused, but one of excitement. The reason soon became clear when the figure that emerged from the private elevator was not Kevin's, but Liam Chen's. The eldest son, the heir apparent before he abdicated his executive duties to manage the family's philanthropic foundation. Liam was the son to Ethan's dark moon, an easy smile, contagious charisma, and a reputation for benevolence that made him beloved by all. He greeted several executives by name, shaking hands and patting backs, until his eyes landed on Maya's cubicle. A smile of genuine recognition lit up his face. "It can't be. Maya? Maya Miller," he exclaimed, his warm voice drawing even more attention. He approached her, completely ignoring the unwritten rules of office hierarchy. "Wow, look at you. The last time I saw you, you were a teenager with your nose buried in art books in the mansion's garden. What are you doing here in this snake pit?" Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Every word from Liam was a shovelful of dirt on the secret she and Ethan were fighting so hard to keep buried. She stood up, forcing a tense smile. "Mr. Chen, Liam, what a surprise. I work in the development department." "Liam, please. It's always been Liam," he insisted, his gaze scanning her face with a familiarity that sent a chill down Maya's spine. "I heard you graduated with honors. My mother mentioned it, but I never imagined my brother would be lucky enough to hire you. Does he even know what a treasure he has here?" Behind the glass wall, Maya could feel, more than see, Ethan's gaze burning into the scene. The temperature in the CEO's office seemed to have dropped 10 degrees. Liam, oblivious or perhaps pretending to be, continued. "We need to catch up. How about coffee? Tomorrow? Just to reminisce about old times. There's a great place nearby." It was an impossible invitation. To refuse would be a rudeness that would raise suspicion. To accept would be to cross a dangerous line, not only for their secret but for Ethan's self-control. Cornered, Maya nodded. Of course, that would be great. Liam's visit left a trail of gossip that spread like wildfire. The girl humiliated by the CEO was actually an old friend of the lovable older brother. The narrative in the office changed instantly, and Maya went from being a victim to a figure of mystery and intrigue. That night, the reunion with Liam was not the topic of conversation in the penthouse. Ethan was strangely quiet, a heavy silence that Maya knew well. It was the silence of controlled anger, a storm brewing on the horizon. She knew he was stewing over the scene, the ease with which Liam interacted with her, the mention of a past that he, Ethan, could never openly be a part of. The seed of jealousy, planted on the already fertile ground of family mistrust, was beginning to sprout. The next day, however, the threat posed by Liam was overshadowed by a much greater one. An hour before their coffee, the executive assistant to the chairman of the board approached Maya's desk. She was not a young woman, but the personal assistant of Harrison Chen, the patriarch, a woman who had been with the family for 40 years and whose countenance allowed no argument. "Miss Miller," she said, her voice formal and cold. "Mr. Harrison Chen requests your presence for lunch, today at noon. A car will be waiting for you at the back entrance of the building." It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Maya's heart stopped. Harrison Chen, the king at the top of the chessboard, the man whose rules Ethan was trying to break. She never spoke to him, even in the years her mother worked at the mansion. He was a presence, a legend, not a person. Lunch was at a private club on the Upper East Side, a place so quiet and opulent it seemed to belong to another century. Harrison Chen sat at an isolated table, a man of 70 with the posture of someone who still commanded armies. His eyes, the same color as Ethan's, appraised her without emotion as she sat down. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know about your marriage to my son," he declared, his voice as calm as the surface of a frozen lake. "I won't ask how or why. Those trivialities don't interest me. What interests me is the future of my family and my legacy." He paused, taking a sip of water. "Ethan is brilliant, but he's led by his heart, a flaw I have tried unsuccessfully to correct. This alliance with you is the pinnacle of his rebellion. It's a burden that will sink him, professionally and personally, and I will not allow it." Harrison Chen stared at her, and for the first time Maya felt the true weight of power. It wasn't Kevin's explosive anger or Ethan's intensity. It was a cold, absolute power that could move mountains or crush lives with the same ease. "So I will give you a choice, Miss Miller. A choice you will make today," he continued, sliding a thick cardstock envelope across the table. "In this envelope are the details of a bank account with $10 million. There are also the contacts for the best sanatorium in Switzerland for your mother's condition, with all expenses paid for the rest of her life. All you have to do is disappear, sign the divorce papers, leave New York, and never contact my son again." He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "Or, you can choose to stay, and if you do, I will use every resource at my disposal to dismantle Ethan's career. I will have the board remove him, I will disinherit him publicly, and I will ensure that the Chen surname becomes a curse for him. And you, Miss Miller, will find that the world can be a very cold and lonely place." He leaned back in his chair, the ultimatum delivered. The happiness of one man and the health of your mother versus what? A love born in secret that will only bring ruin? The choice is yours. You have until the end of this week. Harrison Chen stood up, leaving Maya alone at the table with the envelope. The weight of those words crushed her. It was no longer about surviving office gossip or a jealous brother's taunts. It was an impossible choice, where every path led to the loss of something she loved more than her own life. Maya left the private club and plunged into the bustling streets of New York, but the city around her seemed like a silent film. The sounds of horns, sirens, hurried conversations, it was all a distant, meaningless noise. In her purse, Harrison Chen's envelope felt like it weighed a ton, a brick of gold and poison. The choice he had given her wasn't a choice, it was a sentence. On one side, the future of the man she loved, his heritage, his purpose. On the other, the life and well-being of the only family she had left, her mother. She returned to the office in a daze, canceling her coffee with Liam with a vague message about a work emergency. Her mind raced in a loop of impossible scenarios. Telling Ethan was not an option. She knew him. He would burn his empire to the ground for her without hesitation, and she would love him for it but would spend the rest of her life drowning in the guilt of having been the cause of his ruin. Harrison Chen's secret was a burden she would have to bear alone. When she arrived at the penthouse that night, Ethan noticed the change in her instantly. The light in her eyes had gone out. "What happened?" he asked, his voice gentle, as he found her standing in the middle of the living room, still in her coat. "You're pale. Is it your mother?" It was the perfect excuse, a half-truth that hurt like a complete lie. "I heard from the hospital. She had a rough day," Maya whispered, unable to look at him. "I'm just tired." Ethan held her, a gesture of pure comfort that only made her feel worse. He didn't suspect, not at first. He just held her, offering the strength she felt she was losing. But in the days that followed, her distance became a chasm between them. She barely slept, jumped at the ring of the phone, and spent hours in silence, lost in thought. The situation exploded on Friday, Harrison's deadline. Liam, not content with Maya's refusal, showed up on her floor with 2 coffees in hand and an irresistible smile. "If Maya can't come to coffee, coffee comes to Maya," he announced charmingly. He sat on the edge of her desk, talking about an art exhibition he knew she would love, reminiscing about an inside joke from years ago. To anyone else, it was an innocent conversation. But to Ethan, watching everything from his office like a hawk, it was a betrayal. He saw the woman he loved, the woman who was pulling away from him, sharing smiles and secrets with the one man in the world capable of awakening his deepest jealousy. The image cemented the suspicion that had been growing in his mind. The problem wasn't her mother. The problem was Liam. That night, the penthouse ceased to be a sanctuary and became a battlefield. "I saw you with him today," Ethan began, his voice dangerously controlled. He stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You looked pretty close." Maya, exhausted from the week of anguish, felt a wave of frustration. "He brought me a coffee, Ethan, that's all. We were on a floor with 200 people." "Don't lie to me," he exploded, turning to face her, the fury he kept contained at work now unleashed at home. "You've been strange all week, distant, silent. And now I understand why. It's him, isn't it? The return of the prodigal son, the perfect brother. Did he offer you something I can't give you? A normal life, without secrets?" The accusations hit her like slaps. He had no idea the hell she was living, the sacrifice she was contemplating for him. The injustice of the situation broke her. "You don't know anything," she yelled back, tears finally streaming down her face. "You think everything revolves around you and your rivalry with your brother? There are bigger things at stake, things you wouldn't understand." "Then explain it to me," he retorted, advancing toward her. "Trust me for the first time this week. What did he tell you? What did he promise you?" "He didn't promise anything. The problem isn't Liam." She sobbed, cornered. "Then what is the problem, Maya? What is the problem?" She stared at him, her heart broken into 1,000 pieces. There was the man for whom she would risk everything, accusing her, doubting her, blinded by his own insecurity. And deep down, she knew Harrison Chen was right. Their love, under this pressure, was becoming toxic. He couldn't protect her from the world without becoming a tyrant, and she couldn't protect him from his family without lying. In silence, she turned and went to the bedroom, leaving Ethan alone with his anger and his whiskey. The fight had drained her last strength. The decision was made. Later, as dawn covered the city, Maya moved with the silent precision of a ghost. The tears had dried, leaving behind a cold, painful resolution. She opened her laptop and bought a one-way ticket to Portland, the city where her mother was hospitalized. Then, she drafted an email to the Human Resources Department, submitting her immediate resignation for personal reasons. Finally, she took one of Ethan's expensive stationery sheets and wrote a note. The words were few, each one a stab to her own heart. "Ethan, I'm sorry, you were right. I can't take this life anymore. I need peace. I need something you can't give me. Don't look for me. Be happy. She folded the paper and placed it on his pillow, next to her wedding ring, which she slipped from her finger for the first time in a year. The white gold band seemed to burn her skin as she left it behind. With a small carry-on bag, she walked through the silent penthouse. She took one last look at the man sleeping exhausted by anger on the living room sofa. His face in repose looked young and vulnerable. The love of her life. The sacrifice of her life. The door closed behind her with a soft click, the sound of a heart breaking and a future being undone. Ethan woke to the silence. A deep, wrong silence that chilled him before he even opened his eyes. There was no soft scent of Maya's shampoo coming from the bathroom, no gentle sound of her footsteps in the kitchen. The penthouse was empty. He sat up on the sofa, his head throbbing from the sleepless night, and saw it, the note. And next to it, gleaming coldly in the morning light, her wedding ring. His heart stopped for an instant and then began to beat with a wild fury. He read her words, each one a calculated blow. I need something you can't give me. The phrase echoed in his mind. He crumpled the paper, a wave of pain and rage consuming him. And then amidst the chaos of his emotions, a clarity as sharp as broken glass emerged. This wasn't Maya, the woman who faced his brother with steely calm, who soothed him from his worst impulses, would not flee with such a cowardly excuse. That note didn't have her strength. It smelled of his father's manipulation. The peace she sought, the subtle mention of something he couldn't give. It was protection from his own family. Harrison had gotten to her, and somehow had broken her. Ethan didn't waste a second on grief. The pain turned into fuel, the sadness into strategy. He went to his computer, his face a mask of cold determination. He wouldn't go after her, not yet. First, he would demolish the kingdom of the man who took her from him. He opened his encrypted email, hoping to find some clue, anything. And there it was. A new message, sent from the airport's cyber cafe, 30 minutes before her flight took off. The sender was an anonymous email, but the attachment was unmistakable. They were high-resolution scans of every document Harrison Chen had given her. The non-disclosure agreement with the $10 million figure. The paperwork from the Swiss clinic, connected to a holding company in the Cayman Islands that his father used for shady financial movements. And in the body of the email, just 5 words. 5 words that changed everything. The 2-month plan. Fulfill it. Win. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Ethan's face. She hadn't abandoned him. She hadn't surrendered. This wasn't an escape. It was a chess move. The final move. She had sacrificed herself, becoming the bait so he would have the weapon he needed. She trusted him to understand. And he understood. The board meeting began promptly at 10 in the morning. Harrison presided, the serene face of an emperor who had just crushed a rebellion. Kevin was by his side, exultant. Liam looked uncomfortable, glancing at Ethan's empty chair. As you can see, Harrison began, Ethan's recent instability and erratic behavior have become a risk to the company. I propose a motion to remove him from his duties as CEO, effective immediately. I contest that motion. Ethan's voice coming from the doorway silenced the room. He walked in, not as a defeated man, but as an executioner. He projected the images from his tablet onto the main screen of the meeting room. They were the documents Maya had sent him. What we are seeing here, Ethan said, his voice resonating with a cold power, is proof that the chairman of this board used company resources to blackmail and coerce one of our employees. An employee who, for everyone's knowledge, is my wife, Maya Chen. The shock in the room was electric. Harrison turned white. Kevin choked. He threatened her, Ethan continued, and used one of our offshore holding companies, the same one used to evade millions in taxes over the past 5 years, to finance the offer. I have the complete money trail. I have statements, emails, and a testimony that I am prepared to take to the federal authorities. Unless, of course, this board makes the right decision. Now. He looked directly at his father. The old king was defeated. He had no moves left. Ethan had taken the board. I propose a new motion, Liam said, standing up, his voice clear and firm. The immediate retirement of Harrison Chen from all his duties, and the suspension of Kevin Chen, pending a full internal audit. The vote was unanimous. The war was over. Ethan's private jet landed in Portland under a light rain. He didn't go to a hotel. He went straight to the hospital. He found her in her mother's room, sitting by the bed, holding the hand of the woman who slept peacefully. Maya looked exhausted but serene. She saw him at the door and her eyes filled with tears. He approached, his heart overflowing with a love so overwhelming it left him breathless. He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't say, "I missed you." He just took out his phone, opened her email and showed her the screen. "Win," he read aloud. And then, he lifted his eyes to hers, a smile she had never seen before, a smile of pure, unrestrained happiness. "I won. We won." He knelt in front of her, took the hand that wore no ring and pulled the ring from his pocket. "I believe this belongs to you," he whispered. "Now can we go home, Mrs. Chen?" Maya cried and laughed at the same time, reaching out her hand to him. There, in the silence of a hospital room thousands of miles from New York, their secret was no longer a time bomb, but the steel foundation upon which they would build the rest of their lives. Free. Together. If Ethan and Maya's story of love and courage moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a like to help us reach more people, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. We love to know how far our narratives travel. Explore our other videos and dive into another universe of emotions.